Hello guys and welcome again to my channel. Today we're going to talk about the diluted earnings per share. So we have diluted earnings per share. Now, what we're going to do in this particular topic is we will try to make our earnings per share lower by considering some potential ordinary shares. So that's the meaning of the diluted earnings per share. And if you can still remember in our past episode, we have an earnings per share of the computation is net income available to ordinary shareholders over average number of shares outstanding. And if you can still remember, we have had our example, which is 600,000 for the Nyaus. And then we have the average number of shares outstanding, 300,000. So 600,000 divided by 300,000, we have an earnings per share of 2 per share. So meaning, if you have 1 share and there is a net income available for ordinary shareholders, which is 600,000, your share in that 600,000, if you have 1 share, is 2 per share. So that's where we ended up in our last episode. Today, we're gonna try to lower this so that we will get the diluted earnings per share. Okay? But before we go through the standard, mathematically speaking, you could do the diluted earnings per share by increasing the denominator. Okay? Because if you increase the denominator, of course, this will dilute. Okay? Like for example, if the Nyaush is still 600,000, but we are going to increase the denominator to 600,000 also. So from 300, it increased by 300. It became 600. As you can see, the earnings per share will now be 1 per share. So it diluted. Okay? So that's what we're going to do in this episode. Of course, mathematically speaking also, there is a second way. Since this is a fraction, you could lower the numerator. Because if you lower the numerator, the earnings per share will also dilute just like this one. But in this particular lesson, this will never happen. Okay? It is because in this particular lesson, normally, the Nyaus will also increase. So, on the potential shares that we are going to talk about later on, the relationship is normally there is an increase in Nyaus. For example, 600 to 3 million, something like that. And there is also an increase in the denominator or the potential outstanding shares. So, average number of shares. So this particular relationship, you can observe this later on. So again, normally, this is the pattern later on. There is an increase in Yaos, there is an increase in the average number of ordinary shares. Okay? There is no such thing later on that will have in Yaos that will decrease. It will always increase and the average number of ordinary shares will increase. Okay? So why is it? When we force to convert the potential shares into ordinary shares so that the denominator will increase, sometimes the Nyaush will increase also. Okay? So this is the relationship later on. And what is the meaning of this relationship? This means, first case, this might result to dilution, just like this one. 2, it became 1. But sometimes, This will also result to anti-dilution. Like for example, if the increase on the NIAUs is significant versus the increase in the average number of shares, which is insignificant, what will happen is the earnings per share will increase instead of being diluted. Like for example, from 600 and 300, which is our base here, what if the NIAUs becomes 3 million? So it increased. And the average number of shares became 600. So both the NIAUs and the average number of ordinary shares outstanding increased. However, if you process this, 3 million divided by 600,000, that's already 5 per share. It becomes anti-dilutive already. It's because instead of decreasing the 2 per share, it increased to 5 per share. So that's what I'm talking about. So that's the intro for diluted earnings per share. Now let's talk about the potential ordinary shares that will make the earnings per share lesser or diluted. So the first potential ordinary share is what do we call as the share warrants outstanding. So let's just rearrange this. How do we rearrange our base earnings per share? Let's arrange this to horizontal format. The NIAUs is, again, it's 600,000 divided by average number of ordinary shares outstanding. So 300,000. So the earnings per share, which is the base, is 2. Okay? Now, let's talk about the first potential ordinary share that we are going to consider so that this will be diluted. So we have the first one, the share warrants outstanding. Okay, let me spell out share warrants. So you can call it also share options. So this is an equity instrument also that you can issue. However, in the share warrants or share options, you'll be giving shares for free. So that's what we are going to compute. How much of those shares are given for free? But first, let's talk about these share warrants, the nature of it. So if you can see these share warrants or share options, it's actually a paper. It's evidenced by a paper. And if you have, for example, 5 of this, you can buy 1 share at a cheaper price than the fair market value. So let's have it as an example here, an illustration. Um, for example, on 7-1, issued share warrants. For example, 100,000 share warrants or share options. Each 5 share warrants. Okay. You can buy 1 share at 15. $15. At 15, 5 share warrants, you can buy 1 share at 15 instead of paying 20 per share. So, is this very useful? Of course, you will be very happy if ever you you will be very happy if you have share warrants. Why? As you can see, if you are given 100,000 share warrants or share options, 5 of which share warrants, if you can present it to the corporation, you'll be able to buy 1 share at a much cheaper price. So this is the exercise price. This 15 here, that's the exercise price. So you can buy 1 share at 15 instead of paying 20 per share. Because if you don't have share warrants, you have to pay this, the fair market value of the share. So again, the share warrant, if you have that equity instrument, it gives you the, what do you call this, privilege to buy share at a cheaper price, at an exercise price that is cheaper than the fair market value. Okay? So that's the potential share here. That should be included in the average number of ordinary shares outstanding if you wanted to compute the diluted earnings per share. Okay? Because the holders of the share warrant, all they need is to exercise the share warrants. And then it will become already ordinary shares. Okay? So that's share warrants for you. But then again, what we're gonna focus is computing the free shares because that's what we're going to add here. So how do we compute the free shares? It's logical. So it's not like really formula based. You just have to understand this. Okay? First, 100,000 share warrants. How many shares are you gonna get if ever you are going to exercise the 100,000 share warrants? So the point of view of our discussion is we are the company, for example, that issued the share warrants. If the holders, the investors who have these share warrants, 100,000, how much will they get if ever they exercise the share warrant? Again, 100,000 number of share warrants. And they have to present 5 share warrants in order to get 1 share. So that means 100,000 divided by 5, that is 20,000, I guess. 20,000 shares. So this is already the potential shares. So if the holders of those share warrants exercise this, then there will be an additional 20,000 shares here. But of course, we are looking for the free shares that you have already issued as if because of issuing the share warrants. So this is not it. Okay? Again, if they exercise 100,000 share warrants divided by 5, they're gonna get 20,000 shares, if ever. Okay? And how much will they pay? Of course, they are going to pay 15 per share. So this is the exercise price. So 20,000 times 15, I guess that's 300,000 if I'm not mistaken. Because 20,000 times 10 is 200,000 and 5 times 20,000 is 5 times, yeah, I don't know. I'm not pretty sure about this. Let's have a calculator, shall we? So 20,000 times 15. Yeah, it's 300,000. So it's 300,000. They're gonna pay 300,000. Okay? They're gonna pay 300,000 and they are going to get 20,000 shares. Okay? Now, let's compare it if ever you have no share warrants. So if you wanted to buy shares using the 300,000 pesos that we have computed here, and we have no share warrants, as if no share warrants. Okay? So as if no share warrants, you're gonna pay the same 300,000, but you're gonna get 1 share by paying 20 pesos. because you have no share warrants and you cannot avail for the discounted exercise price. Okay? So, what will happen is, 300,000 divided by 20, you have 15,000. So, for the same money, if you have no share warrant, you're gonna get 15,000 shares only. But because there is a share warrant, you're gonna get 20,000, the investors. So, as if you are giving for free 5,000 shares. So, that's what we are going to add here in the denominator. Okay? However, if ever the company has a calendar year of January 1 to December 31, and you only issued the share warrants at 7/1, the 5,000 shares that you will be subjected to a fraction because again, we're talking about average number of ordinary shares outstanding and you can only use 6 over 12 because July 1 to December 31 is 6 months. So 6 over 12. So what will happen? You will have 2,500. Okay? And of course, since the denominator has already increased, that will become dilutive surely. It's because there will be no changes in the net income available for ordinary shareholders if we talk about share warrants outstanding. So, what will happen? The numerator will still be 600,000, whereas the denominator will become 302,500. Of course, if this becomes bigger and there is no change in the numerator, the earnings per share will dilute. To how much? We have 600,000 divided by 302, 500, and that's 1.98. Okay? I hope you can follow these share warrants or share options. Those are potential shares. However, we're not going to get the potential shares. Instead, we're gonna get the free shares as if that you have given up because of issuing the share warrant. So, if you wanted to master this, you have to play and replay what I've said earlier. Okay? So, this is logical, although it's as if it's a formula-based solution, but this is actually logical. You're just using logic and concepts. Okay? So again, where did we get the 5,000? We get the 5,000 by comparing how many shares does the holder of the share warrants get if they have share warrants, which is 20,000 shares, versus the number of shares that they're gonna get if ever they have no share warrants. That's 15,000. So the difference is as if the free shares issued by your company by issuing the share warrants. Okay? That's it. Second potential um, diluted. The second potential diluted is the convertible bonds payable. So, this is your debt. However, it could be converted into shares. So, for example, you have convertible bonds payable of 1 million, for example. However, that is outstanding at the beginning of the year, 1 million. Again, we have subjected this to, let's go back first. We have subjected this to diffraction because we're looking for the average number of outstanding shares, ordinary shares outstanding. 6 over 12 is coming from July 1 to December 31. But sometimes, if ever, before the year ends, And if the holders of the share warrants exercise it, for example, at 10-1, 20x1, for example, so you have to get the number of months from 7-1 to 10-1 only. And that's what you're going to put in the numerator. So, July, August, September. July, August, September. Yeah, September. So, 3 months only. Okay? So, that's how important learning this conceptually. Okay? Now, let's talk about convertible bonds payable. So, you have a debt from an investor. And that is 10%. And that is 3 years maturity term. So, since this is convertible bonds payable, so the investor who has given you money, which is your creditor, you are the debtor, you have given him a chance from being a creditor to become a shareholder because you issued a convertible bonds payable. So, what will happen? There are provisions just like this. Each 1,000 bond can be converted to, let's say, 20 shares with a par value of, let's say, 100. Yeah. 20 with a par value of 50, for example. 40 per share. Something like that. Okay? So, as if there are provisions like that one. So, meaning, if the creditor that lets you borrow the 1 million converts it, what will happen is the potential ordinary shares that you are going to issue already is 1 million divided by 1,000 bond. So there are 1,000 times 20 shares. So 1,000 times 20, that's 20,000. That's the potential ordinary shares that you are going to issue if the creditor that you have opted to change his bonds payable, bonds, investment in bonds into shares. So if he will say, I would like to be a shareholder and not a creditor, then you have to issue this 20,000 shares. Okay? So that's what we're looking for. Actually, if this will not happen, as if, because that is illustration number 1, let's go back to our base earnings per share. If that is issued in 1-1, so 20,000 times 12 over 12. So 20,000 shares is the potential ordinary shares that you have to issue. Okay? So that's 20,000. That's as easy as that. However, the same with the share warrants that we have talked about. If this convertible bonds payable has been issued, for example, at 4-1, so 4-1, 20x1. So 4-1, 20x1 to December 31, 20x1, that's 9 over 12. Okay? We're gonna use here 9 over 12. But if 4-1, 20x1 and it was exercised only, and the conversion option has been availed by your creditor at 10-1. So from 4-1 to 10-1, that is your numerator. How many months are there? So April, May, June, July, August, September. Yeah, you're gonna use 6 over 12. Okay? So that's how we use this one. So, for simplicity of our discussion, as if on January 1, you have issued these convertible bonds payable to someone, and they've given you money, so they become creditor. And we're going to assume that this convertible bonds payable is not yet converted. So, the creditor did not yet exercise the conversion option. Then we're gonna use 12 over 12 here. That's 20,000. So, what's the twist here? The twist is there will be some changes on the net income available for ordinary shareholders. Why? Because if we force these convertible bonds payable to be converted into ordinary shares, we are gonna save something. And what is that? We're gonna save the interest expense. Again, when we put the 20,000 here, it's as if we are forcing the convertible bonds payable to be converted already in ordinary shares. Of course, if we force to convert it, then we will save interest expense. And in this particular scenario, we have 10% times 1 million. That's 100,000 savings. Okay? For 1 year. Because again, 1/1 to 12/31. Okay? But if ever, the convertible bonds payable again has been issued on 7/1, for example, or 4/1, let's stick to 4/1, then the interest expense savings is 100,000 times 9 over 12. But that's not the case here because we issued it at January 1 and it is outstanding, it has not been converted up to 12/31, we're gonna save the interest expense of 100,000. Okay? 100,000. However, here's the other twist. This 100,000 is not immediately the overall savings. Why? Because if there is a tax rate, for example, there is a tax rate of 20%. Yeah. You have to after tax this. Why? Sales minus expenses, that is our way of getting the net income actually. So for example, 1 million and then the expenses is 900,000. The expenses, for example, is 600. So we have a net income of 400. Of course, if you're a manufacturing firm, no. Manufacturing firms or merchandising, the expenses is composed of cost of sales and operating expenses. But basically, sales or revenues minus expenses, we're gonna get the net income. And that net income will be subjected into tax, for example. So in our example, we have 20%. So 20% of 400, that's 80. We're gonna get 320,000, right? So what is the meaning of this? Actually, the tax is claiming that on the 1 million, they have 20%, but also they have 20% on the expenses. So meaning, you will not be so much happy with your sales because 20% of which will go to the government. But you will be happy a little bit on the expenses because 20% will also be handled by the government. And since we're talking about here interest expense as the savings, you will not be very happy immediately. It's because 20% of this savings will go to the government. Do you get me? So if that's the case, because this interest expense is actually here, again, sales minus expenses, the summary is 400,000. The government will get the 20%. It's as if saying, give me your 20% sales, give me your 20% of expenses. So this interest expense, the savings that you have, you're not going to enjoy the 100% of which. Okay? Because 20% will be enjoyed by the government. So 100,000, if this is the tax rate, you're only gonna get the 80%. So you have 80,000. That's what you're going to put here. 80,000. So what will happen? The NIAUS increased 680,000. And this one, we have 320,000. So we are not still sure if ever this will result to an to dilution or anti-dilution? It's because both increased. So let's check by calculating. We have 680,000 divided by 320,000. You have 2.125. So that means it became anti-dilutive. Okay? So we have to answer if ever you're going to be asked, how much is the diluted earnings per share? You stick at 2, not 2.125, because this potential share, the convertible bonds payable, is actually anti-dilutive. Okay? So that's the meaning of that. And there is already an evidence that sometimes it will not result to dilution, it will result to anti-dilution. Okay? But of course, since I wanted you to see later on a comprehensive problem, let's revise. Um, let's do this 5%. For example, the interest rate is 5%. What will happen? This will become 50,000. Your savings for interest expense, that's 5% times 1 million. Times 80%, that's 40,000. Let's see what will happen if ever we revise it. The tax rate is still 20%. The principal of the bonds payable is still 1 million. So this will just become 40,000. So 640,000. Let's see what will happen. Instead of 2.125, we're gonna get 640 divided by 320. It's still 2. So there is no dilution. The diluted earnings per share is still 2. Okay. Last, we just have to have this change again so that everything that we have talked about will become dilutive. So let's change the interest rate into 2%, of course. So if that is 2%, this will become 20,000. 80% of 20,000 is 16. Of course, we're gonna use here 16. This will become 616 because I wanted all of our examples to result to dilution. So 616. Of course, this will still be the same, the 320,000. $616 divided by 320,000, 1.925. 1.925. So that's the diluted earnings per share based on that example. So we have revised the interest rate into 2%. Okay? So you can play and replay this part if you did not understand. But I guess you will. Let's move on to the third potential ordinary share. The third potential ordinary share, let's put it right here. The third potential ordinary share is the convertible preference share. So, originally that is a preference share, but you have given the investors the right to convert it into ordinary shares. So, they are still considered as potential ordinary shares. So, for example, you have convertible preference shares, which is 1 million, and there is a percentage, and that convertible preference shares each has a par value of 20, for example, or 10. So that means there are 100,000 shares. Okay? So there are 100,000 shares. And for example, this convertible preference shares is cumulative. That means it doesn't need any dividend declaration by the board of directors. They will get their share immediately. Okay? So this is cumulative. And it could be converted. For example, let's get to the point. It could be converted into, can be converted into 50,000 ordinary shares. So this is still a potential ordinary share. So we're going to force it. Okay? We're going to force it to be converted into 50,000 ordinary shares. And for example, for simplicity purposes, we have to issue that convertible preference shares at 1-1. And let's assume still that this convertible preference shares has not been converted up to 12/31. So meaning, this has become outstanding convertible preference share all throughout the year. So it was not actually converted to 50,000 ordinary shares during the year. Is that important? Again, that is very important. It is because if it is converted on 7/1 of this year, then you're gonna use 6/12 in here. Okay? But in this case, it's outstanding all throughout the year, so we're gonna get 50,000 whole because we're gonna use the weight 12/12. So we have 50,000 here. And this will become 350,000. However, there is again a twist. What's the twist? You're gonna save something. What are you gonna save? So if this is a convertible preference share, guys, and it is cumulative, of course, on the net income of the company. For example, what do we have here? So 600,000. So on the net income, remember, the net income minus preference dividends, you're gonna get the NIAUS after deducting the preference dividends, right? So, meaning, the NIAUS will increase if we're going to force this convertible preference shares to be converted into ordinary shares. We're gonna save this. So we have a savings of the preference dividends, in which, in this case, that's 10% times par value of the preference shares. You're gonna save 100,000. That's the savings. Okay? So we're gonna put here 100,000. Sir, why did you not apply the tax rate? The same with the convertible bonds payable. Because on the sales minus expenses, interest expense is here. And then we're gonna get the net income. And then we're gonna get the tax. And we will have the net income after tax. So the interest expense here has not yet been subjected to tax rate. Okay? So we have to after tax it still. Because again, you cannot be able to say that since you have saved 100,000 a while ago, we have 100,000 savings on interest expense. You cannot say that um, all of the interest expense savings is yours. Because again, the interest expense account is here in the expenses and it's happening before taxes are concerned. So the taxes happened only here. So we have to after tax this. How about preference dividends? Preference dividends actually comes after here. The tax has already been removed from the preference dividends. So meaning this 100,000 is already after tax. So you don't need to after tax this. Just like the interest expense. The interest expense is before taxes. So you have to after tax it yet. You follow? So this 100,000 will be put here in the NIAUS immediately without getting the tax rate. So you have 700,000 here. Divided by 350,000, it's still 2. So from 2 to 2. So there is no dilution that has happened. It is because the magnitude or the yeah, the magnitude of the plus 100,000 here is the same with plus 50,000 here. So the percentage of 100,000 over 6 and 50,000 over 300,000 is the same. So it resulted also to the same earnings per share. So there is no dilution that happened. There is no anti-dilution that has happened also. So those are the three potential dilution. Uh, you can call this potential ordinary shares that will make the earnings per share diluted. But sometimes it will result to anti-dilution also. The question is, the last question by the way, the last question is, if there are a lot of potential ordinary shares or potential dilutive elements, like for example, if all the three are present in the problem, what are you gonna do? So what you're gonna do is to rank it first. Rank the three first. From dilutive to anti-dilutive. How do you do that? So this is the last comprehensive example. Everything is present. There is share warrants, there is convertible bonds payable, and there is convertible preference shares. So what are you gonna do? You'll have to rank them. So we'll have ranking. So you will have the share warrants outstanding first. So you'll have the numerator and denominator. How much did it contribute to NIAUS? Zero, right? If you can still remember, zero. But there is 5,000 contribution to the average number. So this is NIAUS number of ordinary shares. So this is its contribution. And if you summarize that, 0 divided by 5,000 is 0. Okay? How about the convertible bonds payable? If you can still remember, we have revised it. So, on the NIAUS, it contributed in the numerator actually of 16,000. And then it contributed to the average number of ordinary shares, which is, if I'm not mistaken, that's 32,000. 30,000? I did not remember. That's 20,000 basically. So each 1,000 bond can be converted into 20 shares. So meaning 1 million divided by 1,000, there are 1,000 bonds. Times 20, that's 20,000. So this is what happened. 16 and then 20,000. So if you summarize that, I guess that's 0.80. Okay? And then the convertible preference share, it contributed a savings on the preference dividends of 100,000, right? And then it contributed to number of ordinary shares, 50,000. So that is 2. So you have to rank them based on their dilutive capabilities. So the lower the number, the more dilutive they are. So the first is the share warrants outstanding. The second is the convertible bonds payable. And the third is the convertible preference share. Okay? So after ranking, you have to apply this to this one. For example, since the first is the share warrants outstanding, you have to put 0 and then 5,000 here. And you will have 600,000, 305,000. So you will have an earnings per share of 600,000 divided by 305,000. You're gonna get 1.97. So it's still dilutive, so you have to go on. But if ever it starts already to anti-dilute, like for example from 2 it becomes 2.10, you have to stop. Because the first is already antedilutive. How much more if you are going to apply the second and the third? It's more antedilutive. You understand? So in this case, we still have to continue. It is because the first in the ranking resulted into dilution. So let's go to the second one. We have the convertible bonds payable. There is an increase in the NIAUS at 16,000 because of the savings in the interest, which is also after tax already. And you have 20,000 here. So what will happen is it will become 325,000. This will become 616,000. So let's see. So 616,000 divided by 325,000, and you're gonna get 1.89. So it's still diluting 1.89 or 1.90 if you are going to round it off strictly. Okay? So you still need to continue. So you have the convertible preference share. So it has given 100,000 savings for preference dividends. So the NIAUS is increasing. It became 716,000. And then it contributed 50,000 here. So 716, 375,000. 716 divided by 375,000. It became 1.91. So in this case, it became antedilutive already. Okay? So if it is antedilutive already, then you have to stick to the diluted earnings per share of 1.90. So if you're gonna be asked, how much is the diluted earnings per share? You answer 1.90. Okay? So let me remind you that the maximum number of potential shares is not only limited to 3. Because sometimes you have 4 types of convertible preference shares and 4 types of convertible bonds payable. So you have to rank them so that your solution for the dilution is actually good. Because if you're not going to rank, maybe if you're going just to choose randomly and you chose this convertible preference share first, what will happen is you only have one solution here because it will become antedilutive already, right? And that is a wrong and illogical computation. So you should rank first the potential diluters into who is the most diluter. Okay? So that's it for the diluted earnings per share. I hope you learned. So if you learned, please click like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell and share it to people who wanted to learn earnings per share and diluted earnings per share. Actually, this is IAS 33. This is not IAS 10 because IAS 10 is all about events after the reporting period. Yeah. So this is IAS 33, International Accounting Standard 33. Thank you again and see you on my next episode.